When my daughter-in-law called me a fat pig in front of everyone, I didn't say a word. I just smiled, because I knew something she didn't. The next day, her father-in-law walked into my company's conference room and froze when he saw me sitting at the head of the table. My name is Linda Parker, and for most of my life, people have mistaken my kindness for weakness. I own a small but growing interior design firm in Chicago. But outside of work, I live simply. Jeans, old sweaters, a small house, and a warm heart. People often assume I'm just an ordinary middle-aged woman with nothing special about her. And honestly, I never cared to correct them. But that night, at my son Ethan's engagement dinner, something inside me changed. For the first time in years, I felt my heart break. Not because of words, but because of how cruel people can be when they think you're beneath them. The restaurant was filled with laughter, champagne glasses clinking, and the smell of roast. The restaurant was filled with laughter, champagne glasses clinking, and the smell of roasted salmon and garlic butter. I wore my favorite blue dress, nothing fancy, but decent enough. When I arrived, Chloe, my son's fiancée, barely greeted me. She just gave me a quick glance and whispered something to her friend. They both laughed. I ignored it. After all, Ethan loved her, and that was what mattered to me. But as the evening went on, I noticed the way she kept looking at me, her lips curling, her eyes judgmental. When dessert came, someone brought up wedding dresses, and Chloe laughed and said loudly, "Well, at least I know who won't be helping with the shopping. I mean, look at Linda. She can't even fit into her old clothes. No offense, but you're kind of like a fat pig, right?" The table went silent. Forks stopped midair. I could feel my face burning, but I didn't cry. Instead, I smiled softly and said, "It's okay, dear. You're young. Life has a way of teaching us all manners." Everyone laughed awkwardly and tried to move on. But inside, something deep within me stirred. I wasn't angry, just disappointed. Chloe had no idea who I really was, and soon she was about to find out. After that dinner, I drove home in silence. Chicago's night lights blurred through my windshield as I blinked away the tears I didn't want to admit were there. I wasn't crying because Chloe hurt me. I was crying because my son Ethan didn't say a word. He just sat there, pretending not to hear. That silence, it said more than any insult ever could. When I reached home, my little dog Daisy greeted me at the door, wagging her tail as if I was the most important person in the world. I knelt down, hugged her, and whispered, "At least you're always happy to see me, huh?" That night, as I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, I stared at the photo on the wall. Me, Robert, and Ethan, smiling in front of our old house. Robert had passed away 5 years earlier. He was a kind man, a high school teacher who believed that success meant living with integrity, not money. He never knew how far I'd go after he died. When Ethan was in college, I started a small home decor business from our garage. At first, I only made handcrafted centerpieces and lamps for local markets. But one of my designs went viral online, and soon orders poured in from across the country. That's how Parker Designs was born. Now, we design interior spaces for hotels, restaurants, and offices all over Chicago. But I've never bragged about it. I never wore expensive jewelry. Never talked about my income. Never tried to show off. People always saw me as just Linda, the quiet widow with a small shop. And that was fine. I preferred being invited differently. He looked ashamed. I suppose, yes. I smiled kindly but firmly. Then maybe it's good you didn't know. Respect should never depend who a person is, only on how they treat others. For a moment, he couldn't meet my eyes. Then he stood up and said softly, "You're right, Mrs. Parker. Completely right." I tilted my head. "For what, Mr. Evans?" He sighed. "My daughter, Chloe. She mentioned something about a dinner. She said some things about you that were unkind. If I had known who you were," I stopped him gently, "you would have treated me differently?" He looked ashamed. "I suppose yes." I smiled kindly but firmly. "Then maybe it's good you didn't know. Respect should never depend on who a person is, only on how they treat others." For a moment, he couldn't meet my eyes. Then he stood up and said softly, "You're right, Mrs. Parker. Completely right." The next weekend, Ethan invited me to their home. Chloe had been crying for days after her father confronted her. She wanted to apologize. When I arrived, I saw her sitting on the couch, head down, shoulders shaking. Ethan stood nearby, fidgeting nervously. I sat down slowly, my hands folded on my lap. "Chloe," I said softly, "do you understand now why words matter?" She lifted her head, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Parker. I was cruel. I didn't see how wrong I was, and I shouldn't have said those things about you." I looked at her, not with anger, not with hatred, but with quiet strength. "You've learned something important today. Words hurt, but actions define us. Your father and I both hope you never forget this lesson." Chloe nodded, her hands shaking. Ethan swallowed hard and said, "Mom, I'm sorry too. I should have defended you. I let her words silence me." I took a slow breath, looking at both of them. "Ethan, Chloe, respect and integrity are more important than appearances. If you want to build a life together, remember this." Then I stood up, smooth and calm, and said, "I forgive you both. But forgiveness isn't an excuse. It's a chance to grow. Don't waste it." The house felt lighter after that. Chloe didn't just learn about my business. She learned about humility, hard work, and the quiet power of dignity. Ethan finally understood that love isn't blind. It isn't about who looks better or who comes from a wealthy family. It's about respect. I walked back to my own home that evening, the Chicago skyline glowing in the distance. I looked at my small office downtown, my little shop, and smiled. I had been underestimated all my life. People had mocked me, laughed at me, and tried to make me feel small. But I had kept my dignity. I had built my life quietly, honestly, and in the end, justice didn't shout, it whispered. Never judge someone by their appearance, wealth, or age. True strength isn't loud. It's quiet, patient, and steady. And sometimes, the world only realizes your worth when it's too late to mock you. Sometimes the world underestimates you, but quiet strength always speaks louder than cruelty.